17 of 14,000, hostile Smith flanker.
Fox times 1. Fox times 2, crank go out.
That was only a few seconds of radio traffic. But what you just heard was not just fighter pilots talking. You heard training, you heard shared expectations, and you heard a system. And that system is what keeps a fight from becoming 2, 3, or 4 very expensive individuals, each having their own private little emergency. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Wildman 31st channel. First off, I want to thank everyone for subscribing during the past month. I'm pretty happy that you are all on board, and I hope I can share my insights with you and you can take something out of it. In this episode, we're talking about communication, but not in the usual way. This is not a video about having the perfect radio voice. It's not about sounding like a fighter pilot. And it's definitely not about trying to squeeze as many brevity words as possible into one sentence. Because good comms are not about talking more. Good comms are about creating less confusion. And as a flight lead, your job is not to fill the frequency. Your job is to make sure that whenever you key the mic, the other cockpits understand what matters, what has changed, and what they are expected to do next. And here's the important part. Good communication does not start when you press the transmit button. It starts much earlier. It starts in training. It's laid down in standard operating procedures. It's taught in academics, in the briefing room, and occasionally in those painful little debrief moments where everybody discovers they understood the plan perfectly, just not the same plan. And ask me how I know.
2 groups. 65, 36,000, hostile 2 contacts, turning hot. Done.
Fang 2, target south group 23,000. Fang 1, target north group stack 36,000, 13,000. Fang 40 scope, short skate, hot, right.
Azimuth 23.
Fang 1. 1 and 2, crank south. 3, 2 ship,
2, 25 miles up. Upper north group, splitting azimuth, drag.
Fang 1 and 2, reference 280. 1 picture.
Fang 1, 3 groups. South group, bullseye, 096, 38, 33,000, letting on Fang 2. North group, bullseye, 069, 48, 2,800, 2,800, track west, hostile.
Fang 1.
And third group, cold track.
The reason I wanted to use that clip is not because the words themselves are magic, because they aren't. A short radio call is only useful if everyone understands the meaning behind it. And that's where tactical communication is often misunderstood. People think good comms are just short comms. But short comms without shared meaning are not efficient. They're just vague. And vague comms do not reduce chaos, they create it. When we in the flight sim world talk about communication, we usually think about talking on the radio. Who said what? Was the call clear? Was it concise? Was it on the right frequency? And yes, all that matters. But the radio call is only the visible part. The real communication sits underneath it. A flight communicates effectively when everyone shares the same basic understanding of what the words mean, what the roles are, what is expected, what is implied, and when something needs to be said explicitly. And that is why a trained flight can do a lot with a very few words. Not because they are telepathic, although if you fly with the same guys long enough, it does sometimes get disturbingly close, but because the meaning has already been built before the call is made. And that is what I call the shared comms contract. The shared comms contract is not one single thing. It's layered. The first layer is a formal one. That is the common tactical language, brevity, standard radio procedures, air control communication, and the terminology that you find in documents like ATP 1-021 and ATP 3-524. That formal layer matters because it gives everyone the same vocabulary. When someone says commit or picture or sorted or engaged or declare, the words are supposed to mean something specific. That is the doctrine contract. It gives us the language, but it does not automatically give us the game plan, because knowing the word sort is not the same as knowing how this warship is going to sort this picture in this mission, with this formation, and against this particular threat. That is where the second layer comes in, the squadron contract. Your standard operating procedures, your training, your academics, the standard game plans you figured out, the briefing habits, and the debrief lessons. If you are not flying in a squadron, then that contract has to be built inside the flight before takeoff, not as a 20-page legal document, preferably. This is still flying, not buying a house. But the basics need to be agreed upon. Because if they're not agreed upon, your short tactical call may sound very professional, but it still will leave 3 cockpits guessing what you meant. And guesswork is where chaos creeps in. Let's take a beyond visual range engagement, for example. The flight is pushing towards a threat group, the picture develops, and you decide to split responsibilities between the 2 elements. You as a flight lead transmit element, target lead group. That's a short call, but in a trained flight, that says much more than those 4 words. It tells the second element, you attack the lead group, and it implies that the lead element will deal with the trailing group. It implies that the element lead manages his own internal targeting. It implies that nobody needs to negotiate target responsibility over the radio unless the picture changes, the sort is unclear, or someone is unable. That is efficient communication, but only if everyone already understands the contract. If the number 3 hears element, target, lead group and thinks, wait, do we take the lead group? Are they taking the trail group? Are we committing? Are we supporting? Am I allowed to shoot? Then the call did not reduce chaos. It just compressed the chaos into one very short sentence. And that is not quite the goal. This is why brevity alone is not enough. Brevity compresses words. Implied comms compress meaning. But implied comms are only safe when the meaning is actually shared. If only the flight lead knows what the call implies, then that is not implied communication, it's assumption. And assumptions, as we all know, have a charming little habit of creating those F-ups at the worst possible times. And the same thing happens in air-to-ground. Let's say the flight reaches the target area and you as a lead transmit, lead element is air-to-ground. That sounds simple, but in a trained flight, the call carries a lot of meaning. It means the lead element is going heads down for the ground task. It means someone is now looking at steer points, sensors, weapons, attack geometry, and the works. In other words, lead element's attention is no longer fully outside the cockpit. So what does that imply for number 3 and number 4? If your squadron contract says that the trailing element remains air-to-air while lead element works the ground target, then that call also means 3 and 4, keep the air picture, monitor threats, protect the flight, and speak up if something becomes a factor. Lead does not have to say, 3 and 4, please remain air-to-air while I prosecute the ground target, maintain situational awareness on the relevant threat axis, monitor the air picture, and inform me if a hostile group becomes a factor to our attack timeline. That would be very complete, but it also would be a fantastic way to ensure nobody ever invites you to be lead of anything again. Instead you say, lead element is air-to-ground, and because the contract exists, everybody knows what that means. That is communication. Not because the sentence is long, but because the meaning is shared. And this is the key distinction. Implied comms are powerful. Assumed comms are dangerous. Implied means that The meaning was trained, briefed, agreed upon, and preferably established by standard operating procedures. Assumed means that the flight lead thinks everybody understands what he meant. Those are not the same thing. And this is where flight leads can create chaos without even realizing it. Because from the flight lead cockpit, your intent often feels obvious. Of course we are talking about the trailing group. Of course the other element stays air to air. Of course number 3 knows what I want. And of course everybody understands the plan. And maybe they do, but maybe they don't. And if they don't, your short call is not efficient anymore. It's just a very compact mystery. Good flight leads do not rely on mystery. They build shared meaning before the flight, then use short calls to activate that meaning when it matters. That is the real point. You do not earn short comms by simply talking less. You earn short comms by building the conditions that make the short call work. So I like to think of flight communications in 3 levels. At the bottom is the common language. That is the formal layer, like brevity, standard comms, and air control terminology. This answers the question, do we understand the words? And above that is common tactics. It's your squadron SOP, it's your training, your academics, and the standard game plans. This answers the question, do we understand what those words imply? And at the top is the mission contract. That is today's briefing. This answers the question, do we understand how we are applying this today? All 3 layers matter. If you lack common language, you get terminology confusion. If you lack common tactics, you get role confusion. And if you lack the mission contract, you get execution confusion. And if you lack all 3, well, at least TACView will be interesting. It's possibly going to be short, but it's going to be very interesting. The purpose of communication is not to say everything. It's to remove the right amount of doubt at the right time. The wingman does not need to know every thought inside lead's head. Heck, sometimes lead doesn't need to know every thought inside lead's head. But the flight does need to know the things that affect shared execution. Are we committing? Or are we aborting? Who has which group? Who is going air to ground and who's covering? Has the plan changed? Those things matter. And when they're not clear, each pilot starts filling in the blanks. Sometimes correctly, sometimes creatively. And creativity is wonderful in art and music, but it's questionable in mission planning. It's less wonderful when number 3 has invented his own version of the intercept. Good communication reduces chaos because it reduces guessing. And the best way to reduce guessing is not to explain every detail in the air. It's to build shared meaning before the flight and then use short, clear calls to activate that meaning when it matters. So, good flight communication is not just radio discipline. It's not just brevity. And it's definitely not about sounding cool on frequency. Although I will admit sounding cool is not entirely unpleasant. Good communication is shared meaning under pressure. The doctrine contract gives us the shared language. The squadron contract gives us the shared tactics. And the mission briefs tells us how we are applying both today. And when those layers are in place, a short call can do a lot. Element, sort lead group. Lead element is air to ground. Flow north. 3 support. Those calls work because the meaning behind them already exists. This is what allows a flight lead to reduce chaos, not by talking more, but by saying the right thing at the right time into a flight that already understands what it means. Because the best comms are not the shortest calls. The best comms are the calls that create the least doubt. And once that shared meaning exists, the next step is using the whole flight effectively. This is where delegation begins, and this is what is the topic of our next video. If you like what I'm doing in this series, please give me a like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And also, please leave a comment. I will make sure to answer them all.